The hum of fluorescent lights was the only sound in the empty office. Rows of cubicles stood in eerie stillness, abandoned by colleagues eager to escape into their evening routines. Ethan Carter sat at his desk, rubbing his temples as the last email of the day vanished from his screen. He exhaled sharply, pushing back his chair. He should have left an hour ago. Sophia, his wife, would be waiting. A voice broke the silence. Still here. Ethan turned. Olivia Hayes leaned against the doorway of the conference room, arms crossed, her lips curled into a knowing smile. She was dressed in a fitted blouse and pencil skirt, her dark hair cascading over one shoulder. She was confident, always had been. "Yeah," Ethan said, stretching his arms. "Just finishing up some reports." "You work too hard," Olivia said, stepping closer. The scent of her perfume, something floral, something warm, drifted toward him. "You know, I could use a second pair of eyes on a project. If you're not in a rush." Ethan hesitated. Sophia had texted him earlier. "Dinner at 7?" He had responded with a quick sure. The clock on his screen read 6:43. "How long are we talking?" he asked. Olivia's smile widened. "Not long. Just need a little feedback." Ethan wavered but finally nodded. "All right. Let's make it quick." Inside the conference room, a dim glow from her laptop illuminated the polished table. Ethan sat beside her, eyes scanning the presentation on her screen. He pointed at a slide. "Your data here is solid, but this argument needs more support." "That's what I was afraid of," Olivia sighed, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You always catch these things." Ethan chuckled. "That's what I'm here for." Her eyes lingered on him, the air between them shifting. "You're always the dependable one, aren't you?" Ethan shrugged, suddenly aware of their proximity. Olivia was watching him, waiting, as if measuring how much space truly remained between them. "How's Sophia?" she asked. The question caught him off guard. "She's good. Same as always." Olivia tilted her head. "Same as always. That doesn't sound very exciting." Ethan frowned. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, tapping a manicured nail against the table. "I don't know. You're here late a lot. You seem distracted lately." Ethan forced a chuckle. "It's just work." Olivia mused, leaning back in her chair. "Work has a way of making people forget what they really want." Ethan opened his mouth to respond but found himself at a loss. What did she mean? That he wanted something other than this life he'd built. He swallowed. "I should get going." Olivia didn't move. Instead, she reached for her laptop and shut it with a quiet click. "Of course," she said, standing. As Ethan turned toward the door, she spoke again. "Maybe one day you'll let yourself want more." Ethan paused. Her words followed him out of the room, clinging to him like an echo he couldn't shake. He walked through the darkened office, past the sterile rows of empty desks, past the vending machine's faint hum, past the weight of a thought he didn't want to acknowledge. By the time he stepped outside, the sky had deepened into navy. A notification lit up his phone. "Sophia. See you soon?" He stared at the message for a moment before typing a single word. "My way." Yet, as he slipped into his car and gripped the wheel, he couldn't shake the feeling that a door had been left open somewhere, one he might not be able to close again. Ethan pulled into the driveway just as the porch light flickered on. Through the front window, he could see Sophia setting the table, her movements fluid, practiced. For a moment, he sat there, hands resting on the steering wheel, watching the life he had built. Stable, predictable, good. Yet. He exhaled, pushing the thought aside as he stepped out of the car. The scent of roasted garlic and simmering herbs greeted him at the door, a warmth he had once found comforting. Sophia turned as he entered, her lips curving into a gentle smile. "Hey, you made it just in time." "Yeah," Ethan said, setting his keys down. "Sorry, I got caught up at work." Sophia studied him for a moment, her brown eyes searching his face. "Everything okay?" "Yeah, just the usual," he said, forcing a small smile. "Deadlines, reports, you know how it is." She nodded, but something in her expression wavered. They sat down to eat. The dining room was quiet except for the soft clink of silverware. Sophia had made his favorite, lemon herb chicken with roasted vegetables, but Ethan barely tasted it. His mind drifted, replaying Olivia's words. Maybe one day you'll let yourself want more. So, Sophia said, breaking the silence, I was thinking we could go away for a weekend. Just the two of us. Maybe a cabin by the lake. Ethan blinked, pulled from his thoughts. That sounds nice. Sophia tilted her head. No, but, he said quickly. It really does sound nice. Things have just been hectic. Sophia smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. No. That's why I think we need it. You've been so distracted lately. Ethan's grip on his fork tightened. It's just work, he said too fast. Sophia set her fork down carefully. Ethan. He looked up. Is there something you're not telling me? His stomach twisted. Well, of course not. Sophia studied him for a long moment before nodding. Okay. She picked up her fork again, but the easy rhythm of their meal had been lost. The silence between them grew heavier, pressing against Ethan's chest. He wanted to reach across the table to say something that would smooth over the tension. But what? Love you. The words sat on his tongue but didn't leave his lips. Later that night, Sophia fell asleep beside him, her breath steady, her hand resting lightly on his chest. Ethan stared at the ceiling, his thoughts tangled. His phone vibrated on the nightstand. He glanced at the screen. A message from Olivia. Thinking about our conversation. His pulse jumped. For a long moment, he just stared at the words. Then, before he could think better of it, he typed a response. I shouldn't be. He hesitated, then hit send. A few seconds later, her reply came. But you are. Ethan swallowed hard, glancing at Sophia, at the steady rise and fall of her breath. He turned his phone over, shutting his eyes. But sleep never came. The next morning, Ethan woke to the soft rustling of fabric. Sophia stood by the closet, slipping into a sweater, her back turned to him. He watched her for a moment, the curve of her shoulders, the familiar scent of vanilla and lavender that always clung to her. A quiet pang of guilt settled in his chest. Morning, she said, catching his gaze in the mirror. Morning, he murmured, sitting up. His phone lay on the nightstand, screen dark, but he knew Olivia's message was still there, waiting. Sophia sat on the edge of the bed, pulling on her boots. I've got an early meeting, but I'll be home by 6. Maybe we can watch something tonight. Just as Ethan nodded. Yeah, that sounds good. She smiled, but it was small, hesitant, as if she were testing the weight of his words. She leaned in, pressing a kiss to his cheek before grabbing her bag and heading out the door. The moment she was gone, Ethan let out a slow breath. He reached for his phone, hesitating before unlocking it. But you are. Olivia's message from the night before stared back at him. His fingers hovered over the screen. He could ignore it. He could pretend last night's lapse in judgment had never happened. Instead he typed, I need to focus on my marriage. A response came almost instantly. Course. But that doesn't change anything, does it? Ethan ran a hand through his hair, irritation flickering through him. Olivia always had a way of peeling back layers, of exposing thoughts he didn't want to admit to himself. He didn't reply. The day passed in a blur of meetings, emails, and small talk he barely processed. But by the time the office emptied, Ethan found himself still at his desk, fingers drumming against the wood. He checked the clock. 5:47 p.m. He should leave. He had promised Sophia. A soft knock on the cubicle wall. Still here. Olivia's voice was warm, amused. Ethan glanced up. She leaned against the partition, one brow raised, as if she already knew the answer. Wrapping up a few things, he said. She smiled. You always say that. He closed his laptop. Not tonight. I should get home. Olivia tilted her head. Right. The perfect husband routine. Ethan stiffened. What's that supposed to mean? She shrugged, stepping closer. Just that you work late, you hesitate before answering texts, and you look at me like you're thinking things you won't say out loud. Ethan's jaw tightened. You don't know what you're talking about. She laughed softly. I think I do. Silence stretched between them. The air felt thick, charged. Then Olivia reached out, her fingertips brushing his wrist. Just a fleeting touch, but enough to send his pulse hammering. You don't have to be afraid of wanting something different, she said quietly. Ethan pulled back as if burned. I should go. She held his gaze for a moment before nodding. Of course. He grabbed his bag and walked past her, past the dim corridors, past the weight of a choice he wasn't ready to make. When he stepped outside, the air was crisp, biting against his skin. He inhaled deeply, trying to steady himself. His phone vibrated. A message from Sophia. See you soon. Ethan stared at the screen, fingers tightening around the device. Then, without another thought, he slipped it into his pocket and walked to his car, unsure if he was driving toward home or away from it.